I rushed home with sports drinks, jelly, and fruit, only to be greeted by a shocking sight. My daughter, who was supposed to be resting at home after leaving school early due to a fever. For some reason, she was being scolded by my husband. Listen carefully. If you're not first, you're worthless. Leaving early just because of a fever is pathetic. Don't complain. I have a headache. Please let me rest. I'm not done talking yet. Lecturing our sick daughter while ignoring his own shortcomings? I've reached my limit with my selfish husband. Does it really have to be first place? Isn't second place good enough? My name is Julie. 47 years old, office worker. Maybe it's my age, but I've been getting tired easily lately. I live with my family, which includes my high school sophomore daughter who's always busy with her club activities, my husband, and my mother-in-law. So, it's the four of us. 2 years ago, my husband quit his full-time job and became a temp worker. He made the decision all on his own without consulting me. Of course, I was shocked. Why all of a sudden? Did something happen? He replied, due to the pandemic, the number of full-time employees was reduced. I was one of the few who stayed because I'm good at my job, but the workload became overwhelming with fewer people. The work environment is awful, and I don't even get to choose my assignments. I want more flexibility in my work. I kind of understood what he was saying. My company also welcomed remote work requests, encouraged shorter work hours and staggered shifts, and even sought early retirees. It's not the company's fault. My husband isn't at fault either. Maybe. Right now, all I can do is wait for things to settle down. Looking back, it was such a frustrating time. But I wish he had at least consulted me. Enduring an unpredictable situation without knowing when it will end is a waste of time. But I'm gonna turn this crisis into an opportunity. By working as a temp and making money on the side, I'll learn about new business opportunities. He was always a confident man. Yes, full of confidence. Before we got married, I admired his bold and fearless attitude, but it didn't take long for me to realize the truth. He's a man full of dreams, ideals, and pride, but stuck in the past. I intend to stay with him, but honestly, I'm full of worries. And my worries were quickly realized. He got laid off from his temp job at the end of the year without any accomplishments and became unemployed. He says it's not the right time yet. I'm gathering my strength and waiting, but frankly, being unemployed for over 6 months is a real burden. I can't support him anymore. I look at my husband, who lounges around the house, with cold eyes. Yet he still talks big. I'm being careful to make the most of my talents. Even in this situation, he's still acting all high and mighty. Enough already, just get a job. I was so fed up that I said that. Julie. It wasn't my husband, but my mother-in-law who snapped at me. How can you say such a thing to your husband? She was furious, her face red. He's trying so hard for the family, and you say things that make him feel cornered. You're really something else. She always defends her son like this. She doesn't like me. It's a daily occurrence to receive sarcastic remarks and complaints from her. Julie, working late again today? Prioritizing work over family, and you call yourself a mother? It's annoying to be constantly criticized, but if I talk back, it just comes back fivefold, so I let it slide. Julie, can't you speak a bit more kindly? A woman without charm has no right to complain if she's abandoned. What? I never want to hear that from you, who was abandoned and kicked out by your husband and then moved in with us. That's my inner scream. I'm trying to be patient. My mother-in-law pampers my husband, always boosting his self-esteem. As a result, I think he's still unemployed. I want him to face reality. He's at an age where getting a new job is difficult. And soon, we'll need a lot of money for our daughter's college education. My mother-in-law's pension is barely anything. My husband, you really understand this? You're not in a position to be picky about jobs. I think this is the main reason I've been so tired lately. I let out a big sigh. The next day at work, I got a message from my daughter. I have a fever, so I'm leaving school early. She rarely gets sick, so I wonder what's wrong. I'm worried. From the message, it didn't seem serious, but leaving early with a big competition coming up was unusual. She must be feeling really frustrated. She's a serious girl who worries more about inconveniencing her team than her own health. I'll leave work on time today. I feel sorry, but I'll finish the remaining work at home. I stopped by the grocery store to buy sports drinks, jelly, and fruit, then rushed home. When I opened the front door, I heard my husband and mother-in-law's voices. I peeked into the living room and saw my daughter. The atmosphere was tense. Did something happen? I quietly listened in. Listen up. If you don't get it, I'll tell you. In the end, the only people who matter are the ones at the top. Anyone who isn't number one is worthless. My husband is lecturing. It seems like he's talking to our daughter, but what is he even talking about? Leaving early just because you have a fever? How pathetic. Don't you dare complain. Even my mother-in-law is blaming our daughter. What is going on here? Why do you even go to school? Is studying and club activities both important to you? That's why you can't be number one. You can only be number one if you focus on one thing. I couldn't believe my ears. Didn't he say he was gonna work as a temp and make money on the side? Isn't he unemployed right now? Why is he acting so high and mighty? My daughter seems too exhausted to respond. I can't. What's can't supposed to mean? I have a fever and a headache. Please let me rest. I'm not done talking yet. Yes, listen to your father's important words until the end. I quickly opened the living room door. Hey, both of you. My husband and mother-in-law looked completely unbothered. Oh, you're home. We're discussing how to become a top achiever with our daughter, so just wait a minute. Ignoring them, I rushed to my daughter's side. Are you okay? Do you have any appetite? Can you take a bath? It's okay. If you rest, you'll feel better soon. As I tried to help my daughter to her room, my husband yelled at me. Wait a minute. This is the important part of the talk. Yes, listen to the head of the family's valuable talk. I glared at them. She's not feeling well, she can't. At least wait until she's better. What did you say? With her school and club activities, we hardly see each other. She should listen to me when I'm home early for once. The reason they don't see each other is clear. It's because my husband wakes up later than she does and spends his nights holed up in your room playing games. It's better for her to get well quickly rather than forcing her to listen to a talk. You know how busy she is. Well, that's true. She has that big competition coming up. Do you think you can get first place? Remember, being anything but first is worthless. Without responding, my daughter and I left the living room. Talking to people like that is the real waste of time. What a waste. My daughter looked even worse than before. She said she felt cold, so I helped her change into her pajamas and put her to bed. Seeing her lips drawn into a pout and her eyes staring up at the ceiling, I was reminded of her childhood. She always made that face when she was upset. She must be bothered by what her dad said. Don't worry about it, just rest. I said gently, and she replied in a tearful voice, I didn't want to get a fever, then closed her eyes. I quietly left the room and headed to the kitchen. I needed to prepare something for her to eat when she got her appetite back. I'll make some soup with an egg and peel some fruit. And I should get a cold pack ready to wrap around her neck when her fever gets worse. Wait, where did I put it? I'm sure I left it in the freezer. No matter how much I searched, I couldn't find it. This is strange. Just then, I heard my daughter's pained voice. Startled, I turned around. I could hear my daughter's voice again. And then, my husband and mother-in-law's voices. I rushed back to my daughter's room. What I saw was my daughter with a bandage wrapped around her forehead. It seemed like they had stuck the cold pack on her. And there were onions wrapped around her neck. "It smells! Help me!" Ignoring her tearful protests, my mother-in-law was putting cabbage leaves on her head. "You'll be okay. Your fever will go down soon." "Shut up! Just do what Grandma says." I was horrified to see my daughter so distressed. Are these people really doing this out of good intentions? I quickly removed the cabbage and onions. My daughter, now with a worse headache from the cold pack on her forehead, was grimacing in pain. "What are you doing, Julie? We were trying to help." "Yeah, exactly. You're doing it wrong. You don't need to cool someone down when they have chills. And onions and cabbage? What? What are you talking about? I'm not wrong. I've been lowering fevers this way for 70 years. I wish they would understand that my daughter is miserable. That's reason enough to stop. Mother, there are many ways to do things, so it's not necessarily wrong, but times have changed, and our daughter doesn't like it. No. There's never been a fever this method couldn't bring down. You'd probably say it worked even if she just got cold from your strange methods. Stop talking like that." I looked at the now wilted cabbage and onions and said, "It's a waste of food." My mother-in-law's eyes widened even more. "I'm not wasting it. I'll eat it properly." My daughter was trembling under the covers. I ushered the two out of the room and, trying to keep my anger in check, spoke quietly. "Please don't disturb her anymore. I'll stay with her. And I have work to do, so please don't come in." "What about my dinner?" I was irritated but held it in. I don't want to waste any more time. "You're healthy, so you can manage your own meal." "What about my dinner?" Why do I have to think about my mother-in-law's meal too? I'm not a maid. "Do whatever you want." My husband laughed through his nose at that. This is why half-hearted people are no good. Half-hearted? I thought I misheard, but apparently not. The pandemic has settled down, and remote work is just an excuse to slack off, right? Using that as an excuse, you're a half-assed housewife and a half-assed employee. Seeing such a half-assed mom is why our daughter is the same. What are you talking about? She can't manage her studies, club activities, or her health. Getting bedridden over a little fever, is she really my kid? What did he just say? The anger I had been holding back boiled over all at once. You, who barely help with raising our child, don't work, and don't do housework, what are you talking about? I've put up with your selfishness for too long, but I've reached my limit. Who do you think you are? Fine, if that's how you feel, then that's enough. What? We don't need a father who blames our daughter for having a fever. What? I looked at him with contempt. He suddenly started to look nervous. I'm gonna focus on taking care of our daughter now. Hey! Of course, she is my child. Right, mother? Huh? Caught off guard, my mother-in-law was flustered. You value your own child, right? Of course. Then please take care of your son who's just complaining over there. I will only take care of my child. Having a father who doubts his own daughter around will only make her fever worse, so it would help if you left. They started yelling something, but I ignored them. Spending time and energy on them is a waste. I called my office and took the day off for tomorrow. My work is caught up, and if anything comes up, I can handle it remotely. I'll stay with my daughter until she gets better. It might be overprotective, but I feel guilty for leaving her home alone so much because of my job. As I expected, my mother-in-law and husband didn't leave. Instead, they had the nerve to say to me, "How long are you gonna stay mad? Make us dinner." I couldn't believe their nerve to say something like that. Did they forget who they made angry in the first place? Not only that, but my husband kept complaining about how I was a half-assed housewife and lacked empathy. So, I told him, I'm too half-assed at housework and work to understand. My daughter's fever wasn't going down. I was on my third day of taking time off work to care for her. Which also meant it was the third day of my housework boycott. My husband seemed to have reached his limit. Hey, cut it out. How long are you gonna stay home from work? Did he really think I would be affected by that? I threw it right back at him. Using our daughter's illness as an excuse to slack off on housework, huh? Ever since I stopped cooking, my husband had been surviving on instant noodles and packaged foods. I knew my mother-in-law was bad at cooking, so it was no surprise, but it seemed the situation was wearing on him after a few days. I answered his blustering calmly. Why don't you do it? What? If it bothers you so much, go ahead and take care of it. Cooking isn't my job. Then what is your job? Huh? I looked at him seriously. If you can answer, go ahead. My husband turned red either from anger or embarrassment. I let out a loud sigh on purpose. You shouldn't be the one saying that. You haven't found a new job yet, but you tell our daughter that anything less than first place is worthless and to master one thing. Who are you to say that? He could only gape like a fish out of water. I've supported you as your wife, had high hopes for you, and I've been patient. But I've reached my limit. Do you even have a reason to be here? You don't understand anything, he shouted, shaking his thinning hair. I'm different from you. I'm cautious. You can't be number one if you rush. Listen, in the end, only the person who's number one wins. Number one is respected. Number one has the power. When I become number one, I won't forgive you even if you cry and apologize. Number one in what? Huh? So, what are you gonna be number one in? Work. Like, you're gonna start your own business and become CEO? No, not exactly. My husband was looking uneasy. Then will you be the top salesperson or have the highest production numbers? Yeah, something like that. Being number one is better than being number two, right? So what will you be number one in? Wait. What I mean is that you should always aim to be number one in everything. Why does it have to be number one? What's wrong with being number two? Stop it. Hearing our voices, my mother-in-law appeared. What kind of wife blames her husband like that? I'm not blaming him. Julie, you need to be kinder. You should speak more gently. No wonder my husband's self-esteem is so inflated with her coddling him like this. The way my mother-in-law looked at me, like I was the enemy. Why do I have to be treated like a bad person? Her protecting her 50-year-old son is honestly disgusting. But I continued calmly. Mother, don't change the subject. I'm the one supporting this family right now. I have the right to talk to my unemployed husband. Or are you gonna help with the finances? What? Well. Just then, the doorbell rang. Oh, who could that be? My mother-in-law stood up. And she hurried to the door as if to escape. Seeing this, my husband also stood up. Let's drop this for now and talk later. Trying to run because he lost his ally? I won't let that happen. Sit down, we're not done talking. He looked like a scolded dog, pitiful and sad. I didn't feel any sympathy. I've reached my limit too. I'll take this opportunity to set him straight. Tell me, why is second place not good enough? As I pressed my husband, a voice interrupted, that's enough. I turned to see my mother-in-law, looking triumphant. Stop getting carried away. You, a mere wife. Why was she acting so confident? We have a guest. There shouldn't be anyone who would ring the doorbell to visit. My mother-in-law had a smug smile. Julie, you're much more pathetic. What is she talking about? Who is here? Standing at the door was a tall, silver-haired man in a sharp navy suit. It was the head of the secretary department, whom I see every day at work. Upon seeing me, he greeted. I apologize for coming to your home unannounced, but I couldn't reach you by phone or message. Oh, I had left my work phone in my bag. I understand that you are on leave, but we urgently need you to come to the office right away, so I came to get you. What? I was given permission to work remotely until my daughter's fever goes down. Yes, but... My mother-in-law suddenly burst out laughing. What a nuisance, skipping work and having someone come fetch you. I'm not skipping work. I'm sorry you had to come all this way. She's always half-hearted and useless at everything. Just because she's a secretary, doesn't mean you have to speak so politely to her. You must be tired. Would you like some tea? My mother-in-law sidled up to him, looking up coquettishly. I watched her coldly. In a way, I admire my mother-in-law for being a man-chaser at her age. That's what got her divorced and kicked out. The department head is a popular silver fox with a hidden fanbase in the office. He's used to women hitting on him, so he completely ignored my mother-in-law. Without even looking at her, he brushed her off and continued. In the 3 days you've been off, work has piled up. I left instructions and have been giving remote directions. It's not working. If you don't come in immediately, the company will incur losses. My husband butted in. Taking time off for personal reasons and causing trouble for the company? She should be fired. Exactly. How troublesome to have to come all the way here for such an employee. Listen. I was about to say something, but the department head beat me to it. I wouldn't come to pick up just any employee. She's the company's deputy representative. What? Huh? Deputy representative? I've asked you to stop calling me that. I don't hold such a prestigious position. My husband and mother-in-law, who had been gaping, suddenly laughed. Yeah, right. She said she works in administration. Exactly, such a funny joke, sir. No, she is the only employee directly assigned to the CEO and is held in absolute trust. The CEO doesn't make a move without her advice. She is a respected figure among all employees. Please, that's an exaggeration. No, without you by his side, his work doesn't get done. My husband interjected again. Come on, no middle-aged woman has that kind of value. What's wrong with that company? The CEO must be blind. The department head shot a sharp look at my husband. The intensity made my husband fall silent. Our CEO appreciates her diligent efforts and work talent. Despite being the manager of administration, she also handles special assignments directly from the CEO, recognized by all as the second in command. I respect her work. Huh? My mother-in-law let out a bewildered cry, blinking rapidly. What did you just say? Manager? Manager? My husband was stumbling over his words. Manager? Who is? He looked like a broken robot. Interestingly, being called the deputy representative didn't faze him, but manager did. Manager was something he could finally understand. Has he not wondered how I've been supporting the household alone for the past 6 months? It's because I have a position that pays well. My husband, with his grand dreams and ideals, probably doesn't care about the household finances. I decided to ask him again. So, why isn't second place good enough? Completely deflated, my husband just shook his head silently. I convinced the department head that I would return to work tomorrow, and he left. My daughter seemed much better, so it should be fine. I'll need to discuss with the CEO how to ensure work progresses even when I'm not there. My husband and mother-in-law looked uncomfortable. Did they finally realize their position? At that moment, I heard my daughter calling me. I rushed to her room and found her standing by the door, looking apologetic. Her fever had gone down, and she looked much better. I'm sorry, Mom. This is all my fault. Why? You had to take time off work and got into a fight because of me. It's okay. It gave me time to think things through. What do you mean? I turned to my husband. Why are you in this house? Is lecturing our sick daughter your job? My husband turned pale. I've been thinking about what this house needs and doesn't need for the past 3 days. What does that mean? Here's a question. Do we need a husband who doesn't work, doesn't bring in any money, acts high and mighty, and even doubts our daughter is his own? I'm not saying I won't work. I just haven't found a job yet. Even if he stammered out excuses, it was already too late. The sorting was already done. We don't need you anymore. Take your mother and leave. What? What? You understand, right? This is the condo I bought when I was single. If we divorce, the ones who moved in will be the ones to leave. Why? We're husband and wife, aren't we? Husbands and wives are supposed to support each other and live together. My husband realized the contradiction in his words and couldn't say anything more. I smiled sweetly. That's right. Whether it's a family, a company, or a marriage, everyone should support each other. There's no way only the person in first place has value. Please! I'll work properly and take care of the family, just don't kick us out. Sure, come back when you can do that. Really? For example, if I became unemployed and you could earn enough to support the household. Oh, no! In other words, the same salary I earn now. It's an impossible task for him, who always complains about work. My mother-in-law approached with a forced smile. Julie, what about me? Can I stay? No, I don't understand what you're saying. Both of you can leave together. Since you're still healthy, why don't you learn to cook for your hardworking son? Oh, my! And so, the sorting was successfully completed. My daughter, fully recovered, participated in her club competition and advanced to the state finals. Dad didn't even know I was in the band. He kept telling me to get first place. In band competitions, schools receive gold, silver, or bronze awards. There are no rankings. By the way, what was Dad first in? Since he talked about it so much, he must have been number one in something, right? I shook my head. I don't know. My daughter was disappointed. What? He was always saying so much. Maybe he was obsessed with being number one because he never could be. Someone who only talks and makes excuses, someone who is easy on themselves, can never be number one in any field. Second place, third place, silver, or bronze, they're not bad at all. When I said that, my daughter nodded. That's right. Results matter, but it's the hard work every day that makes us who we are. My daughter said something so wise. My divorce from my husband was finalized. He took half of the savings, but I didn't mind at all. It's much cheaper than supporting someone like him forever. Our finances will significantly improve with reduced expenses. My ex-husband now lives in an apartment with his mother. He started a delivery job. I was surprised someone with such high ideals would do that, but it's normal if you need to live. How do I know? Because he keeps sending me messages full of regrets. Why didn't I realize this when we were married? I got my priorities all wrong. I should have started working sooner, even if it was just a part-time job. Working, moving my body, and contributing to society makes everyone number one. I'm sorry for saying this now. It's way too late, isn't it? Oh, it seems he's still very much absorbed in self-pity. If you know it's too late, don't contact me. Just work hard and burn off the fat you gained while unemployed. I miss your cooking. Mom's food is so salty. Everything is brown, and now I see how much you cared for the family when you cooked. The husband who was so full of himself is now like this. But I won't be fooled again. Hoping my mother-in-law becomes a better cook, I gently closed the screen. I won't let it bother me. He's just a stranger now. Today, I worked hard at my job and did the housework. That's enough. I don't need anyone's idea of being number one. If I score myself, it's a perfect score, and seeing my daughter's healthy smile is all the satisfaction I need. Get out with your kids, you trashy wife. With those words, my mother-in-law throws my belongings at me. I look to David for help, but he just awkwardly avoids my gaze. How dare you deceive my precious son? I haven't cheated. This child is definitely David's. Shut up. You're probably cheating with that part-timer named Ryan, aren't you? At those words, I snap. As if being falsely accused of cheating wasn't irritating enough, now to be suspected of having an affair with Ryan too. I glare at my mother-in-law. What? Let's do a DNA test. Fine by me. At my words, my mother-in-law smirks confidently. Providing evidence of your own infidelity, what a foolish wife. Laughing, my mother-in-law. I swore to prove to her that I've never cheated. 2 weeks later, I checked the results of the test and sent them to my in-laws' house. A few hours after, they must have seen the results. In just a short time, my phone was flooded with dozens of messages from my mother-in-law. What have you done? My name is Luna. A 27-year-old housewife. Everyone, dinner is ready. Ah, thanks as always. My parents have always been gentle, and it was rare to see them argue. My mother, while gentle, always made sure that my father and I could live peacefully. My father, who never forgot to respect and appreciate her for that. Perhaps because of how they raised me, I've rarely gotten angry myself. Sure, there are things I can't compromise on or that irritate me. But getting angry is exhausting, and it often seemed easier to just let things go. Luna, are you not pushing yourself too hard? You always give in to others. My mother would worry about me sometimes, but I believed I had my own convictions. I stood my ground when it mattered and lived at a pace that didn't overwhelm me. That's so like Luna, always doing things at your own pace. My friend Layla often said that. I didn't mind being seen as laid back. After all, I wasn't causing trouble for anyone, so there shouldn't be any problem. And there were people who loved me for being that way. I love how gentle you are, Luna. Those were the words of my husband, David. We met in college. At a matchmaking party a mutual acquaintance had organized. I hate conflict. I like people with a peaceful aura who don't get into fights, like you, Luna. At the matchmaking party, that's what David told me. He didn't really want to attend the mixer, but also didn't want to make his friends uncomfortable by refusing. That's why he ended up going. You really think of your friends, huh? I think that's wonderful. Thank you. Hey, Luna. If you're not seeing anyone right now, I'd like to go out with you. And with that confession from him, we started dating. He accepted that I had my own non-negotiables, and we were able to date without any major arguments or issues. Luna, will you marry me? Yes, I'd love to. After several years of dating, we got married. Thanks for becoming a part of this family. Ah, David's too good for me. My in-laws were also gentle people, with a smiling mother-in-law and a kind-looking father-in-law. At that time, I was truly glad to become a part of their family. What, your father-in-law? Not long after David and I got married, my father-in-law was hospitalized. Apparently, he was involved in a car accident. Fortunately, there was no danger to his life, but he fractured his leg and had to be hospitalized for a while. Well, it's good that it wasn't serious. I'm sorry to make you worry. When David and I went to visit, my father-in-law apologized with a look of regret. Really, hearing about the accident almost took years off my life. My mother-in-law said, her face clouded with worry. Actually, my in-laws run a restaurant. Primarily, my mother-in-law manages the place, with my father-in-law and a few part-timers supporting her. My father-in-law is good at paperwork, while my mother-in-law says, if I look at letters and numbers for too long, my head starts to hurt, indicating her aversion to it. With my father-in-law hospitalized, the person handling all the background tasks was gone. Since some of these tasks involve money, they couldn't just be left to the part-timers. What are we going to do now? I found myself muttering. It's already hard enough that my father-in-law was suddenly hospitalized, putting a mental strain on them. In this condition, managing the restaurant seems impossible. Maybe they'll have to temporarily close. Thinking this, David and I headed home. Luna, can we talk? As we were taking a break at home, David approached me with a look of guilt. I could somewhat guess what he wanted to say. Can you quit your job and help out at the family restaurant? And he pleaded with me like that. David and I work at completely different companies, doing entirely different jobs. Hey, David. You know how much I value my current job, right? David avoids my gaze at my question. I work at a company founded by Layla. I've been doing my dream job in design there, and I'm incredibly passionate about my work. I've talked about this to David multiple times, and he has always supported me. I understand that. But I was hoping you could help out at the family business until Dad gets back. At his words, I hesitated. So, I asked David for some time to think it over, leaving the matter unresolved for the moment. Indeed, running the restaurant would be difficult under these circumstances. But honestly, if it's that concerning, David could help out. Well, that's probably impossible. David, like his mother, isn't good at paperwork. Considering he doesn't do household chores either, it's likely he can't cook. David trying to help out at the store would just be a hindrance. When you think about it, I'm the only option. With that thought, I decided to consult Layla. I get it, your in-laws are having a tough time, and it's hard to say no given your position as their daughter-in-law. That's right. Plus, I have a good relationship with my in-laws and want to help them. That's why I have a favor to ask you, Layla. Layla gladly agreed to my request. Thanks to that, I was able to decide to help out at my in-laws' store. David, about the store, I'll help out. Really? Thank you. David was thrilled with my decision, and when he told his mother, she was grateful too. If they're that grateful, I'll do my best. Just when I thought that, my mother-in-law's attitude changed dramatically once I started helping. Now that you're here, you'll have to prove yourself useful. The plan was for my mother-in-law to cook, the part-timers to handle the front, and for me, who was unfamiliar with everything, to work behind the scenes. However, my mother-in-law started ordering me around. Take orders quickly, if you have time to stand around, clean, tidy up and wash the dishes. It escalated from there, and eventually, she even had me doing simple cooking tasks. Without allowing for breaks, as soon as I tried to sit, she'd say, "You're a daughter-in-law, don't slack off." "Mrs. Luna, I'll take care of this, please take a break." That supportive voice belonged to Ryan, a college student and the part-time leader. He was observant and subtly supported me. But being unaccustomed as I was, I ended up exhausted from being overworked every day. "I'm going to collapse at this rate." "Just bear with it until Dad comes back. If we can get through this, we'll manage somehow," David would say with a troubled laugh whenever I told him about how I was being treated. David wouldn't even listen to my complaints. Maybe I made the wrong choice. At first, I thought David was a peace-loving and kind person. But in reality, he preferred to avoid trouble and wouldn't get involved in any. Because he's that kind of person, he wouldn't even try to mediate between my mother-in-law and me. Seeing this side of him, I sighed. I need to rest soon. I was told to come in early again the next day by my mother-in-law. I gave up talking to David and decided to rest in my room. "Don't dawdle, get to work quickly." I was helping out at the store from morning, but feeling nauseous, I crouched down. "Ugh, I feel sick. Mrs. Luna? You look pale, are you okay?" Ryan, noticing me, offered to take me to the hospital. "Thank you, Ryan. It's okay. My sister Layla always takes care of me, so it's the least I can do." Ryan smiled brightly at my words. Ryan is Layla's brother. I was surprised to find him working at my in-laws' store. We were both surprised when we saw each other there. "But if you hadn't been here, I wouldn't have made it to the hospital." When I tried to go to the hospital, my mother-in-law complained and tried to stop me. Ryan stood up to her, saying, "Are you planning to make a sick person work?" And thanks to him, I was able to get to the hospital. "Congratulations." "Eh?" And upon examination, it was discovered that I was pregnant. It seems I was feeling unwell due to morning sickness. I immediately contacted David. "What? Pregnant? Is that true? Pregnant? Luna's pregnant? Despite it being David's phone, I could somehow hear his parents' voices. Why can I hear your parents? When I asked, David explained the situation with a bit of trouble. Apparently, after my mother-in-law thought I had run away, she contacted David to complain, and they ended up going together to my father-in-law to vent. Well, until just a moment ago, my dad was actually lecturing her, saying she's working out of kindness. What are you complaining about? Really? My father-in-law had scolded my mother-in-law, saying, Luna quit her job out of goodwill to help, and don't make her work when she's not feeling well. Hearing that made me feel somewhat relieved. My father-in-law was on my side. That alone was comforting. Luna, congratulations on your pregnancy. Then, the phone was handed to my father-in-law. My wife was wrong. I've told her to pay you a more generous salary as compensation. At those words, I was taken aback. That's right, I hadn't received any salary. Until now, I hadn't had the luxury to worry about such things and had completely forgotten about my salary. Luna? You haven't received your salary, have you? My silence must have given me away. My father-in-law asked, his voice containing anger. Well, I've been collecting it for her. David hurriedly answered to his father's question. Why are you collecting it? It's Luna's salary for her work. It should naturally go to her. My father-in-law's voice was low and cold. My mother-in-law responded. But Luna is a wife, so it should go to her husband, David. Enough. She's someone's precious daughter from another family. What are you thinking? My father-in-law scolded. I was told later that although my father-in-law is usually mild-mannered, he becomes terrifying when someone steps out of line in terms of common sense or manners. My mother-in-law, who usually acted sweetly and amiably, was afraid of him. However, with my father-in-law hospitalized, her usual restraint was gone, leading to her recent outburst. You've married into quite the family, haven't you? Ryan, who had been silently listening next to me, said with a wry smile. I returned the smile with a wry one of my own. I'm sorry for everything. Later, David came to apologize to me. He must have been scolded by his father to protect his wife. David promised that he would truly protect me from now on. All right. I'll forgive you this time, but in return, make sure you really protect me. I still have feelings for David, and I don't want to deprive my child of their father. So, I decided to wait and see how things would go. Sorry for the sudden notice. I'll be in your care from today. It's all right, you've had a tough time. Take it easy here. Not long after, I decided to go back to my parents' house for a prenatal visit. I came home early, wary of my mother-in-law's presence. Being pregnant isn't an illness, and you're not in your final month, so you can work as usual. My mother-in-law contacted me after I returned from the hospital. Apparently, she hadn't learned her lesson even after being scolded by my father-in-law. I told David about it, but all he said was, I understand. I'll talk to Mom, and nothing was done. Therefore, I used my morning sickness as an excuse to take refuge at my parents' house early. I also told my caring father-in-law about it. My family is to blame. Luna, your decision isn't wrong, he said, accepting my decision. My parents also warmly welcomed me, so I've been able to stay at my parents' house with peace of mind. Well, if Luna has decided, I won't oppose it. Just make sure to give birth to a healthy child. Even David was surprised by my early return but saw me off with those words. The only one who opposed until the end was my mother-in-law. To think you're going back to your parents' house for your birth so early. She complained about it. However, since she had been glared at by my father-in-law the other day, she couldn't stop me. The store will manage by splitting the work among the part-timers. That's right. You just focus on the baby, Ryan and Layla said, so I focused solely on my baby. This might have been the most peaceful and happiest time for me. Indeed, the morning sickness was tough, but my love for the growing baby in my belly only increased. And a few months later, I gave birth to my adorable son, Asher. Thank you for being born, Asher. I simply adore Asher. My parents are smitten with him, and Layla and Ryan were thrilled too. However, David seemed to be different. David, haven't seen you once. Are you that busy with work? Yeah, it seems like it. He didn't visit me while I was at my parents' house. Not even after the birth. Hey, David. Why aren't you showing your face? Thinking he might not be realizing his responsibilities as a father, I contacted David. I'm really sorry, work has been so busy, was his reply. I sighed at his response. What is he doing? I'll have to confront him when I get back home. With that determination, I returned home with Asher after some time. Welcome back, Luna. And I've missed you, Asher. David greeted us with a smile, lovingly looking at Asher. Seeing this, I felt a bit of remorse. He truly loved Asher. I've managed to free up some time from work, so I'll be more actively involved from now on. With those words, we were able to live peacefully for a while. However, Asher developed a sudden rash and we had to seek medical care. Is that really true? Yes, there's no mistake. Asher's blood type is A. During the visit, we also had Asher's blood type checked, which turned out to be A. Both David and I are type O. So, we were shocked, having assumed Asher would also be O. Of course, I haven't cheated. My only romantic experience has been with David. Did you go to the hospital today? How was it? The rash is getting better, but... What? Is there something else? David tilted his head, puzzled by my demeanor. I told him about Asher's blood type. He widened his eyes in surprise. Huh, I didn't know that could happen. That was all David said at the time. I was relieved because he didn't seem to suspect me. I heard a little bit. The next day, that's what my mother-in-law exclaimed as she barged in. Apparently, David, after hearing from me, immediately reported to his mother. She, having heard the story, suspected I had cheated and came storming in. Having a child with your lover. You shameless wife. I haven't cheated. David is the only one for me. I retorted while glaring at David, who had let her in and now looked uneasy behind his mother. David was fidgeting behind his mother. Amidst this, Asher, startled by his grandmother's shouting, began to cry. Quiet! Stop it, please! I instinctively picked up Asher to protect him from my mother-in-law's advance. She glared at me, gripping my belongings. Take your child and get out, you shameless wife! She screamed, throwing my things at me. I looked at David for help, but he just awkwardly looked away. How dare you deceive my precious son? I haven't cheated. Asher is definitely David's child. Shut up. You're probably cheating with that part-timer Ryan, aren't you? At those words, I snapped. Already irritated by the baseless accusations of infidelity, now to be suspected of something with Ryan too. I glared fiercely at my mother-in-law. What? Let's have a DNA test. Fine by me. At my words, my mother-in-law smirks confidently. Providing evidence of your own infidelity, what a foolish wife. She laughs. I vowed to prove to her that I had absolutely not cheated. After returning to my parents' house, I explained the situation to them. How could she berate you like that? We believe in you, Luna. My parents believed in me. And even offered to cover the costs of the DNA test. Oh. What's wrong? At that moment, I received a message from someone. This person had heard about the situation and offered their support. Having that person's support would be really reassuring. I'll definitely prove them wrong. My anger towards my mother-in-law became my driving force. I'll make her regret this. 2 weeks later, I checked the DNA test results and sent them to my in-laws' house. I wonder how they'll react. Muttering to myself, I went to Asher. A few hours later, after they must have seen the results, my phone was flooded with dozens of messages from my mother-in-law. "What have you done?" Picking up the phone call that came just then, I was met with her yelling, "I just proved what you wanted. Don't joke with me, you worthless wife." And then she proceeded to hurl insults at me. This was getting nowhere. Deciding this, I left Asher with my parents and headed to confront my in-laws. "I'm coming too. I can't forgive anyone who hurts my best friend. I'll go as well." Layla and Ryan, who had joined us along the way, were already informed and had agreed to come with me. As a result, the three of us headed to my in-laws' house. "We're coming in. How dare you show your face here? Welcome, Luna." At the in-laws, there was my mother-in-law, fuming with anger, my father-in-law, welcoming me with a smile, and David, cowering in a corner. "What are you angry about? I just proved my innocence. This is wrong. You must have tampered with it." My mother-in-law lamented, holding the DNA results in her hand. There, clearly written, was that Asher was indeed David's son. "And you're still not satisfied after seeing that? How could this be possible? First of all, I've been slaving away for you. I didn't even have the time to cheat, you know?" In reality, my days were spent being called out early by my mother-in-law and only getting back around the time David returned home. Even during work, I was constantly under my mother-in-law's watchful eye, leaving no room for infidelity. Even I, who was suspected of being the lover, was too busy with work and studies to meet outside the store. If anything, when I'm not at the store, I'm often with friends or family. "You can check if you like," Ryan confidently stated. Faced with his assertion, my mother-in-law fell silent. Then, Ryan's gaze shifted to David, who was silently observing. "Why are you staying quiet, David? Eh? First of all, it was you who asked Luna to work at the store, right? Yet, you ignore your wife being overworked and don't help her. Instead, you report to your mother to have her scold Luna in your place. That's pretty cowardly of you." David, faced with these cold words, averted his eyes, mumbling, "That's not true." This was the perfect opportunity to air my grievances. "You don't lift a finger to help around the house even though I come home exhausted every day. While I'm preparing meals, he lazes around on the couch, never does any cleaning or laundry, yet complains about dirt and piled up laundry. When I retort with, 'If you notice, why don't you do it?' he always escapes to the bedroom, saying, 'I have to get up early tomorrow.' Moreover, whenever I tried to talk to him about his mother, he would only offer lip service and never actually do anything. Just as Ryan said, you knew your mother would get angry about Asher, so you reported it, didn't you? You really are a coward. Because..." David looked away, searching for an excuse. This man is not kind. He's just a man who wants to avoid trouble. "There's no excuse. I agreed to help at the store because you asked me to. But between the salary issue and now this, I'm completely fed up with you. I'm really sorry." Finally, David apologized, looking flustered. "I was just confused because Asher has a different blood type. About that blood type issue, there's someone else here to explain." David and my mother-in-law puzzledly responded with to my statement. Responding to them was, "I'll explain about that." It was my father-in-law, who had been watching the situation unfold with a smile until now. His voice was frighteningly low. Sensing something, my mother-in-law turned pale. What's wrong, Mom?" David was confused by his mother's reaction. Ignoring the two, my father-in-law pulled out a piece of paper. "Is that a DNA test? Whose is it?" "Mine and yours." Indeed, that paper was between David and his father, stating that their parent-child relationship was denied. Seeing it, David was speechless. "I'm not Dad's son." David was actually the child of my mother-in-law's lover, not my father-in-law. The lover was type A, and David was also type A. My mother-in-law's refusal to accept Asher's DNA results and her outrage were likely attempts to cover up her own infidelity.
That's not true, right?
David had assumed he was type O because both his parents were unaware of the truth.
Well, I've always had my suspicions. Eh?
He had noticed my mother-in-law's infidelity long ago and had doubted whether David was truly his child.
But at that time, David was 10 years old, and I had already developed a bond with him from raising him. So, I thought there was no need to uncover the truth and didn't investigate further.
However, after hearing about my situation, my father-in-law became angry and decided to reveal the truth. He contacted me, saying, "I'll handle the investigation instead, so please include our tests as well."
Investigation? About what you've been using Luna's salary for?
At those words, David turned pale.
Pushing the store and household chores onto Luna while you indulge in affairs. It seems like father and son are alike in this respect, my father-in-law remarked.
Indeed, David had been having affairs and spending my salary on his lovers. It turned out his lovers didn't know he was married. In other words, he had deceived both me and his lovers.
You'll pay for this,
I told him, and David slumped down.
You two will pay for your affairs. And we're getting a divorce. I'll also quit my job,
Ryan added, following my father-in-law. Ryan then declared his decision to quit as well, as if adding to the statement. Why? My mother-in-law's face asked.
If Luna and her husband are getting a divorce, the store won't survive. You only cook and don't do any of the administrative work like accounting.
Even that cooking had lately been left to me and the staff. The regulars had noticed this, saying they came to support Luna, who works hard in her husband's place. Without me, the foot traffic had already started to dwindle. If neither Luna nor the father-in-law return to the store, the remaining regulars will leave too.
The store, supported by the regulars and Luna, will surely collapse. Everyone senses this and is quitting one after another. No way,
Ryan said, causing my mother-in-law to panic. That store was originally managed by my mother-in-law's family for generations.
I can't let it end with me. Hey, we're not getting divorced, right? It'll be hard to find a job while taking care of a child, even with support from the family.
David, realizing the situation, pleaded with me. Then, Layla stepped forward.
Unfortunately for you, she's my capable subordinate. I'll take full responsibility for employing her.
I had consulted with Layla before quitting, and she had arranged for me to return to the company anytime. So, re-employment was not an issue.
I won't forgive anyone who hurts my best friend,
Layla said with a smile to David. Following that, David and I successfully divorced. David kept pleading, "I don't want to divorce, I want to be with Luna and Asher," but Layla's husband, a lawyer, played a crucial role.
I told him to squeeze everything out of your husband.
True to Layla's word, David paid a substantial amount in alimony and child support, which I received in a lump sum, allowing me to live comfortably for a while. My father-in-law also opted for a divorce without demanding alimony, in exchange for no division of assets.
Are you sure you're okay with not demanding alimony? Yes, it's fine. I have enough savings, and either way, she's finished.
Originally, my in-laws ran the same store but kept their finances strictly separate. Thanks to this, my father-in-law had been able to save money, while my mother-in-law had squandered hers, leaving her with no savings. All that remained for her was the store.
That store will collapse soon. Once that happens, she'll have no one but David to rely on,
my father-in-law said. And that became a reality. Sometime later, while having tea with Layla, the topic came up.
What happened to David and the others? Oh, I got a message from them.
I went on to tell about what happened next. The store could no longer manage without us, leading to its quick demise. The remaining regulars left. And soon after, the store was buried in debt. Eventually, my mother-in-law had to sell the store and the land to pay off her debts and, with nothing left, ran to David.
but David seems to be having a hard time too.
Turns out, one of David's mistresses was a newcomer at a company his company dealt with. The newcomer, feeling deceived, cried and complained to everyone, quickly spreading the story. The story reached David's company, and he was indirectly asked to resign.
With the money from selling their house, David had to pay off the debt he incurred to cover the alimony and child support and moved to a cheap apartment. He was living day to day on part-time jobs when his mother showed up, making life even harder for him. And he reached out to you for help? After betraying you first, as if you would help him.
Exactly.
I blocked him immediately.
He had sent a long message detailing his situation, but I didn't respond and blocked him instead. Thankfully, I've been living peacefully since. Meanwhile, I've been raising Asher smoothly with my parents' help. With my stay-at-home mom actively taking care of him, I can raise my child with peace of mind.
It's good to see you happy. Let's talk about the future then.
We were having tea today to discuss future plans. With Asher still requiring a lot of care, I plan to start working from home once he grows a bit more.
I'm so glad you're back, Luna. Your designs are popular, and there's something special about them that only you can create.
Layla complimented me. Feeling appreciated like this motivated me to work hard once I return. A few years later, around the time I began to return to work.
Hello. How are Asher and you today? Hello. He's been energetic since the morning.
Ryan stopped by the workplace. He's always been considerate and fond of Asher. Now a university graduate, Ryan works diligently in sales at the same company as Layla and me.
Luna, I've liked you for a long time. Will you go out with me?
Ryan proposed, leaving me speechless. Facing my stunned silence, he looked at me earnestly.
I'll make sure both you and Asher are happy.
Ryan said that to me. However, I'm 5 years older than him. Because of that, I couldn't immediately respond and decided to put off answering. Then, soon after that.
Luna. Eh? David?
David appeared before me. Surprised by the sudden encounter, I couldn't flee immediately, and David approached me with a smile.
I've been looking for you. Hey, let's get back together. I can't stand it anymore. I refuse. Who would get back with you?
I immediately rejected David's words.
You too? You're mocking me too.
Then, suddenly angry, David raised his fist towards me. That's when it happened.
What are you doing?
Ryan intervened, pulling me close and glaring at David.
Enough already. Luna doesn't need you anymore. Shut up. What do you know about Luna? Hey, Luna, you still need me, right? No, I don't need you. I already have him.
At my words, David looked hurt.
What's that supposed to mean? In the end, you betrayed me and had an affair with him.
Ryan and I both showed a look of disbelief at his words. We had said at the time that neither of us had the time to engage in affairs.
Unlike you, I haven't cheated. He and I aren't even officially dating yet. Lies. It's not a lie. Indeed, he confessed to me recently, but I haven't given him an answer yet.
Though, my feelings are pretty much decided. Thinking this, I held Ryan's hand that was embracing me. Then, Ryan widened his eyes and then smiled happily.
You have no place here anymore. Or would you prefer I call the police?
At my words, David left, cursing. Apparently, he didn't want the police involved.
About what you said just now. I'll be happy with you and Asher, right?
At my words, Ryan nodded with a smile. And that's when we started dating. Later, I asked Layla's husband to issue a restraining order against David. It seems he had finally snapped at his mother for squandering his earnings and pressuring their lives and kicked her out. Feeling lonely afterward, he sought us out. The ousted mother wandered without a destination and eventually went missing.
It doesn't matter anymore. Because now, I am happy. Luna, it's about time. Yes, I'm coming.
Today is Asher's entrance ceremony. Asher adores Ryan as his dad. Ryan is fully committed to responding to such Asher. To anyone looking, they were a happy family. I'm truly glad to have become a family with the two of them. With that thought, I headed towards them with a smile.
What?
Suddenly, my husband splashed beer on me, exclaiming, "What's with that attitude? You're just a parasite living off me. If you have a complaint, then get a divorce and leave. Someone like you is just in the way." Somehow, he produced a divorce paper already filled out with his name and threw it at me. Divorce. Under normal circumstances, one would panic, but my feelings were different. Rather, I had been longing for these words. All right. I accepted far more readily than I believed possible.
Huh?
My husband was taken aback by my calm acceptance. Ignoring my surprised husband, I calmly began to prepare to leave the house. However, he seemed to think I wouldn't really leave, and while he laughed at my preparations, that laughter would only last until today. He's about to learn what it means for me to be gone. By then, his smug smile will turn into an expression of utter misery. My name is Emma. I'm a 43-year-old housewife. I live with my husband Ryan in a quiet residential neighborhood. Ryan and I started dating about 10 years ago, introduced by a mutual friend. From dating to marriage, it took about 2 years. Looking back, I wonder why I decided to marry Ryan. It's a mystery. He was so quiet initially, responding to my attempts at conversation with brief yes or okay answers, making it honestly boring to be around him, and I thought we would break up soon. But before I knew it, we were married. Well, all of that was Ryan's fault for what he said.
I will make you happy. I promise to make you happy. You won't have to suffer, trust me.
He proposed, sounding like something out of a drama. The moment I heard it, I wondered if he was deluded about himself. But Ryan's face was so serious, I couldn't help but laugh.
I didn't expect to hear something like that.
And your answer is?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
And so, we became husband and wife. After getting married, we moved into the house my father used to live in. My father had been talking about returning to his hometown to work for a while, and in the course of those discussions, he frequently suggested, "Why don't you live here?" With our marriage, the timing aligned, and thinking of the future and the convenience, we decided to live here. I believed we would have a happy married life together. "Here you go," my husband said, throwing an envelope at me as he returned from work. It was white one.
Thanks. It's not thanks. It's thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With that, Ryan seemed satisfied and went to change into his casual clothes. Opening the envelope, it contained $600. This isn't enough, I muttered to myself. The envelope thrown at me by my husband contained $600 for our monthly living expenses. Since getting married, the living allowance he gave me was just $600 a month. Electric bills, gas, water bills, plus groceries and everything else. Fortunately, not having to pay rent does help a bit. I've told my husband countless times that this isn't enough to live on, but every time, the response I get from him is awful.
Huh? You should be grateful to even get $600. I'm busting my back every day, working long hours and enduring stress from my bosses. And you're telling me to give you more because it's not enough? For a mere housewife like you?
It's always like this. He claims he's having a hard time, working hard every day to support the house, so I shouldn't nag. It always happens. Yes, I get where he's coming from. But that's a separate issue. Trying to reason with him only sours his mood and makes the atmosphere at home terrible. In the end, I cave, and it's as if nothing happened. The shortfall in the living expenses, I cover by dipping into my savings from when I was working. This has been going on since we got married. Where did all those promises from his proposal go? My dissatisfaction with my husband, who seems oblivious to any happiness, just keeps piling up, while he continues to live as he pleases. As if he were the king of his own little country. Hey, beer.
Yes, oh, sorry. We're out of beer.
Huh? What do you mean there's no beer? I told you before to always keep it stocked, didn't I?
Sorry, I was so busy with house chores, I couldn't go shopping today.
Despite explaining my reasons, it's as if my words don't even reach his ears.
Don't give me excuses. You're a stay-at-home wife, aren't you? Then household chores are your job. That includes shopping. The only thing that can soothe me after a hard day's work is a beer. And you ruined that. You destroyed my moment of bliss.
Once it gets to this point, anything I say is futile. All I can do is listen to his rant. Then, watching for a moment, I say, I'll go buy it right now.
Hurry up. My precious time is ticking away while we're talking.
Dressed in my house clothes, I dashed to the nearby supermarket to buy beer. I ran back home with the beer. By the time I arrive, I'm out of breath, with sweat dripping down my forehead.
I'm back, here's your beer.
My husband, lying on the couch and yawning, snatches the beer from me. Then, sitting up, he takes a sip.
This is it. Nothing beats beer after a long day. Glad you like it.
You look tired, and you're sweating. You smell a bit, too. Go take a shower. As if it's my fault I ended up like this. His thoughtless words hit me hard, both irritating and shocking me. Really, he only thinks about himself. A month has passed. My husband is still only concerned with himself, not caring at all about me or the house. His absolute dominance is almost impressive at this point.
You're not going to see me off to work. I'm in the middle of laundry and can't stop right now. I don't need excuses. Don't make me say this so early in the morning.
Sorry. With a click of his tongue, my husband heads off to work. I watch him leave until he's out of sight, then return inside the house. The moment I close the door, I let out a deep sigh. How long do I have to keep living like this? Regret for marrying him and negative feelings about my future life surge through me. Even doing my usual chores feels impossible today. I zone out while looking at the garden. Having a day like this once in a while might be nice. I tell myself, almost as an excuse, that I've worked hard enough up until now. Then, the cell phone I had placed nearby starts ringing. It's my husband calling. I debate whether to answer it or not, almost hoping he'll give up during my hesitation. But the call from my husband doesn't stop. I sigh deeply once more. And then, deciding to face whatever it is, I answer the phone.
Hello? Why don't you answer right away? How many times do I have to call? I'm sorry, I couldn't pick up right now because my hands were full.
Well, whatever.
What's for dinner tonight?
I'm surprised. He's never called to ask what's for dinner before. What's this about?
I'm still thinking, but maybe beef stew, it's been a while.
Huh? What? His cryptic behavior is troubling me.
What's going on?
My colleague said he's going to eat steak after work today.
And then, he asked what's for dinner at my place today.
What do you think?
What do you mean, what do I think?
Don't you think it's strange? My coworker's eating fancy steak while I'm stuck with stew. How come I, his senior, have to eat cheaper food than my colleague? His dissatisfaction is clear from his tone. He's envious of his coworker getting to eat something as nice as high-quality meat. Meanwhile, he's at home eating stew. Clearly, he wants to eat something even better than steak. He wants something that would make his coworker jealous. He wants to be thought of as amazing.
You know we can't afford that kind of luxury, right? If you really want it, you'll have to figure it out yourself.
Indeed, we don't have the means to eat such fine foods. Of course, if he's willing to pay for it, that's a different story. But that's unlikely to happen with him. It's really pathetic. Don't you care at all? That I'm falling behind someone like my colleague? Don't you, as my wife, feel anything about this? But what can I say? We simply can't afford it. He doesn't seem to understand that at all.
If it were possible, I would do it. But as I said, we don't have the means for that, do we? Especially when you give me so little for the household expenses.
I couldn't help but complain. Immediately, he retorts sharply.
What? Do you even understand how hard I'm working to earn money? And there you are, just living off of me, daring to complain. If you have complaints, why don't you manage the household chores better? Other housewives are perfect at managing their chores, not you. You're the only one who complains to the breadwinner. I didn't say that much. I'm just asking for enough to cover our monthly expenses. That's what's annoying. Who do you think you are? If you're going to complain that much, why don't you work and earn some money yourself?
His anger explodes. At this point, there's nothing I can do but apologize. I'm sorry. I've been too demanding. This usually smooths things over quickly. But this time was different.
You think you can just apologize and everything will be fine? You think I'll just forgive you? No one's going to forgive that. The anger I've accumulated over the years won't be settled with just your apologies.
His reaction was unexpected. His anger had been significant until then. It was all over the difference between having high-end meat or stew.
There's no need to get that angry.
It's fine.
Talking to you is just a waste of time. I won't be coming home tonight.
Do whatever you want. See ya.
Wait.
The call was disconnected. I never thought it would come to this. The next day, my husband didn't return home. Was it really that terrible for him? Just because of one meal's content, to show such anger? I pondered if I was at fault and considered apologizing to my husband, but each time I thought, am I really to blame? After all, it all started with his unreasonable demands, not understanding the household matters. Each time I questioned myself, I could feel my heart growing heavier. Still, as a wife, I had no choice but to support my husband and keep telling myself that. About a week later, my husband came back.
I've been away for a while, but this place is covered in dust. Did you even clean? This is my castle, you know? I can't understand how you could leave it dirty like this.
I did clean, but I've been feeling a bit under the weather recently. Maybe I couldn't do as much as I wanted to. Despite everything, I found myself wanting to rely on him. I didn't do anything specific. Just a few kind words would have been enough. However, the words that came out of his mouth were far from kind. Get the dinner ready.
Are you going to leave your tired husband who's been working all this time unattended? Couldn't become a good wife in a week, huh? In the end, you're still the same useless wife, aren't you?
After a week of not knowing where he was or what he was doing, to come back and immediately hurl insults at me. Hoping for his kindness was futile. So, this is how it's going to be. In the next moment, I felt a sense of lightness I had never experienced before. This was new to me. As I was trying to understand what was happening, hey! Are you listening? Get the dinner ready. And don't forget the beer, he lashed out again. But this time, something in me had snapped, and I responded to my angry husband with a nonchalant attitude. Seeing this, he suddenly stood up, went to the fridge himself, and took out a cold can of beer. And then...
What?
Suddenly, he doused me with beer. What's with that attitude? You're just a parasite living off me. If you have a problem, then let's get a divorce and you can get out. Someone like you is just in the way. Out of nowhere, he threw a divorce paper with his signature already filled out at me. Divorce. Under normal circumstances, one would panic, but my feelings were different. I had actually longed for these words. All right. I accepted it more readily than I could believe.
Huh?
My husband was taken aback by my calm acceptance. Ignoring him, I calmly began to prepare to leave the house. However, he seemed to think I wouldn't really leave, and laughed at my preparations, but that would only last until today. He was about to learn what it meant for me to be gone. By then, his smug smile would turn into a face of utter misery. 3 days later, I returned to my father's house. During that time, my ex-husband called me multiple times, but since we were divorced, I naturally ignored them. Even after such a clear decision to divorce, I couldn't understand why my ex-husband would still call. The day I was told to leave and get out. When I was carrying my bags outside, waiting for a taxi, my ex-husband must have never thought I would actually go. Now, putting on such an act is pointless. My decision to divorce won't change. If you insist, I won't reconsider the divorce, though. Reconsidering? As if he had the right to say that. While all this was happening, the taxi arrived. The driver helped me with my luggage, and I got into the taxi. It seems that was when my ex-husband finally realized this wasn't a joke, as he frantically tried to stop the taxi as it began to drive away, but it was too late. Leaving my ex-husband standing there, the taxi drove off, and he could only watch in a daze. Even now, when I recall the sight of my ex-husband at that moment, I can't help but feel a sense of schadenfreude. After all the things he did to me, it's only natural.
Emma, I'm going out for a bit, so I'm leaving the house in your care. Take care.
Life with my father is incomparably more comfortable than when I was living with my ex-husband. While my father is at work, I take care of the household chores. No more being accused of just sitting around doing nothing. I can't help but savor the joy of a life without stress. Then, I received a message on my phone. It was from my ex-husband. He probably thought emailing would be effective since I wasn't answering his calls.
Like I'd fall for that.
I thought and left the email unattended, moving on to preparing dinner. After all, there's no need for me to interact with him anymore. However, the messages from my ex-husband didn't stop. What's more, he even started calling again. That's just like him. Probably, the continuous ignoring hurt his pride too much to bear. Though I intended to keep ignoring him, the relentless calls and the barrage of messages became too much of a hassle, and I finally answered.
How many times do you think I've tried to reach you? And you've ignored every single one. You know you're supposed to respond immediately to my calls, no matter what. That applied when we were living together. Now that we're divorced and living separately, that no longer holds any weight. Besides, I'm in the middle of preparing dinner right now, so could you not bother me?
With a tone more defiant than before, my ex-husband's anger was palpable even through the phone.
What's with that attitude? Don't think you can treat me like this and just get away with it.
Always so domineering and threatening, my ex-husband was.
I've had enough of this.
Goodbye, then.
What? Hey, wait.
I hung up the phone. He continued to call many times after that, but I ignored all his attempts. I blocked his number, and that was the end of it. I returned to my interrupted dinner preparations, and about an hour later passed. I was almost done. That's when it happened. The doorbell rang. I went to the door, expecting a guest, only to find my ex-husband standing there.
So, you were here after all. You've made a huge mess, you know. Let's go now.
Unbelievably, he had left work early and sped here in his car. The intensity of his obsession made me step back in fear.
Quick, come on.
He tried to drag me out forcefully, grabbing my arm.
Stop it. Shut up. If you don't listen, I'll have to take measures.
As he raised his hand to strike, I resisted with all my might. The struggle continued at the doorstep, attracting the attention of neighbors who gathered around, watching us with curious eyes. To avoid attracting more attention, let's go inside and talk. However, strangely, my ex-husband refused to enter. Despite my insistence, he absolutely refused to come in. It was odd. Upon closer inspection, my ex-husband seemed to have a fearful look in his eyes. Could it be? I thought, just when a car horn sounded from behind. It appeared the crowd gathered in front of our house was blocking the way, making it impassable. However, this horn sounded familiar to me. Wait, that sound is. Then, the car that had been honking parked in front of the house. The door opened, and out stepped my father. Seeing my father, my ex-husband instantly let go of my arm, his previously bold demeanor disappearing as he quietly looked down. My father addressed the frightened ex-husband in a calm and gentle tone.
Ryan, it's been quite a long time, hasn't it? I'm glad to see you're doing well. It's been a long time. You look well too.
Standing in front of my father, my ex-husband froze, hardly moving.
So, what brings you here? I hope you're not here to take my daughter back, are you? Oh, no, that's not.
Fumbling for words, my ex-husband began to visibly shake.
What's got you so frightened? I haven't said anything strange, have I? I just mentioned how you threw beer on my precious daughter, called her a parasite, and then slapped a divorce paper on her and kicked her out of the house.
Now, I'm curious what you could possibly want with her now. My father said, his voice carrying a hint of menace. Feeling the weight of my father's presence, my ex-husband started to back away. But my father didn't let up.
Well? Aren't you going to say anything? What's the reason for your visit?
Then my ex-husband looked at me and said,
I was tricked by Emma. That's why I kept calling her. But Emma ignored all of it, so I came here today to have a proper conversation.
Tricked? In what way?
It's about the house. That house was supposed to become mine, but then this happened.
This happened. That incident was the reason behind my ex-husband's persistent calls and messages. That was actually a small act of resistance on my part.
Yours? When did anyone ever say that? Sorry, but I've never said anything like that, and neither did my father. What? Are you kidding me? Didn't your father say I could live in that house when we got married? I haven't forgotten.
To think someone could be so deluded. It was especially enough to claim such a thing in front of their father-in-law.
You're way off. Dad only said it might be good for you to live there. Right, Dad?
That's correct.
I may have said you could live there, but I never said it was yours to have. Then, at least do something about them.
Them, the reason he had been incessantly contacting me, and the house my father had allowed us to live in belonged to a friend of his.
A friend? That intimidating-looking guy? He might look tough, but he's actually very kind once you get to know him. Tom has been a friend of my dad's for years, helping him start the company where my dad is the president.
Tom has been a longtime friend of my father, and together they founded the company. My father serves as the president of this company, while Tom supports him as the vice president.
You're kidding, your father's the CEO? Why didn't you say anything sooner? Sorry, it slipped my mind with all the moving and other stuff going on. Dad was also quite busy back then, weren't you? Yes, at that time, we had a major deal going on, and things were hectic. I stayed here, and Tom handled things over there. He really helped me a lot.
My father's company, involved in construction, has grown to the point where it receives requests from all over America.
The client was based here, and Dad had to travel back and forth every day for the deal. It became too hard, so he moved back here for easier access to the deals, leaving Tom to manage things there. Then, that house is... As I've said before, it's not yours. The house was given to us under the condition we manage it. If Tom is coming back, that means you have to leave.
Upon hearing the truth, my ex-husband's face turned pale, and he bit his hand in shock.
No way! I told my boss and my colleagues that my house is a high-rise condo. That it was mine. Now what? That's something you did on your own. I have nothing to do with it. You'll have to figure it out yourself.
My ex-husband had misunderstood that he had been given the house by my father. His self-serving interpretation of the situation had led to this pitiful outcome. How pity. It was then that his phone rang. Glancing at the screen, my ex-husband screamed and threw the phone away, collapsing onto the sofa and muttering incoherently. And he was collapsing onto the sofa and muttering incoherently. Picking up the phone, I saw the call was from his boss. And there were messages from colleagues as well.
We're at your house right now. They're saying this isn't Ryan's house.
I'll call you, so please answer. Almost immediately, another call came in. I tried to hand the phone to my ex-husband, but he buried his face in the sofa, mumbling unintelligibly, motionless. Driven by his pride, my ex-husband had always tried to present himself in the best light. He would spend his monthly salary on treating others, trying to convince everyone he was wealthy. This incident exposed his true self, leading to a breakdown of his character. I forcibly took my motionless ex-husband to the car and drove him to meet his colleagues. Seeing him in this state, they were speechless, recognizing a side of him they had never seen before. Perhaps out of fear, they ran away. Afterward, my ex-husband was laid off from his job. The company had deemed there was no hope for his return and decided to let him go. He's now back at his parents' home, recuperating. Despite our divorce, there's still the matter of money he owes me. Currently unable to work, his parents have covered his debts, tearfully apologizing to me. While it left me with mixed feelings, that's just how things are. I hope my ex-husband can repay the kindness his parents have shown him. As for me, here are the documents for the next deal.
Thank you. But this makes things difficult.
If you keep saying that, we'll fail the next deal. You need to focus.
Good grief, I sure have got myself some employee.
I've since joined my father's company and am living a fulfilled life, very different from before. Balancing housework and my job is challenging, but it's nothing compared to what I went through before.